bright, beautiful morning at the circuit Marco Simoncelli at Misano. Yesterday we had a cracking day of racing, but a real treat today. This the opening race weekend of the GT World Challenge Europe season, and we've got two races today. It's a triple header here at Misano, and it must be said, at the moment the track temperature's a fair bit cooler than it was yesterday, but it's a morning race. We've got two races today, just reiterating that. It's a triple header weekend, and if the racing is half as good, John Watson, as it was yesterday, we're in for a real treat. It was a humdinger. I think that's the official term.
Well, we saw a lot of close racing, and I expect we're going to see very much the same. There's one of the cars that was very much a part of that battle, certainly the Lexus, Thomas Neubauer, and this is the qualifying session, the final qualifying session that we're going to watch before we get into the second and third events. There's the other car, Jules Gounon, in the Bentley, who at one point this car led the race, the evening race at Misano, only then for the safety car intervention, full course yellow, and towards the end of the race just simply was overwhelmed by the weight and the power of three-span Thor, the WRT Audi.
Yes, it ended up being a WRT Audi 1-2 in the event last night, but what we saw yesterday was, of course, the driver one did session number one to define the grid for the first of the races. That was yesterday's racing, and now driver number one getting their second attempt at qualifying, and they're defining the grid for the second of our races today, race number 3 of our triple race rota. That's at 3 o'clock this afternoon Italian time, 2 o'clock UK time, and the second race, as defined by their teammate, is at 11:20 this morning, 10:20 UK time. So real jumble. So maybe one needs to look for the form guide as to what happened in qualifying in the first qualifying session.
Indeed.
And you talked about Panis and the Tech One Lexus, that is, and the Bentley, and they were way clear. Super impressive performance from the pair.
Yes, the Lexus and the Bentley, we've got the Bentley on screen, Jules Gounon behind the wheel. They ended up being 4/10 quicker than the rest of the field. Like 4/10 of a second is really very little, but in the context of a GT field, that's like a year. It was an enormous. They just somehow or other got the best out of their tyres early in the session, got those two wonderful laps in. So track temperatures now obviously much cooler, even cooler than they were for last evening's first of the three events that we're going to enjoy here this weekend. So it will be interesting to see where times are. Probably is irrelevant because it's the same for everybody.
But I guess it's still, temperature is a massive factor. A lot of drivers going out and going again. Haven't seen too much of the Lamborghinis. They've been there or thereabouts, John, the tail end of the top 10. The times are not going to come straight away, but obviously Michael Grenier, the first one to really get going around that lap. But yesterday's pole time, just as a point of interest, 1 minute 32.124 seconds. We're at least a second away from that at the moment.
But again, we always have to sort of second guess as to what teams are doing, whether they're going to use a brand new set of tyres or use the best of what they've got and keep their new tyres for the two afternoons events, two races. As we look at Thomas Neubauer, and that, I mean, amazing. That car, whatever Jules Gounon could do, when it got on a straight line, the Bentley had no answer for it whatsoever. So there's a huge amount of torque from the V6 twin-turbo motor in the Lexus. But what's very important also, aside from Neubauer's driving ability, is that the chassis is extremely efficient. Gets its power down, the car is balanced, it's working. It's not giving the driver those nervy, twitchy moments that you sometimes see when you get to the edge of the levels of grip that the drivers are going to be exploring all morning and certainly all afternoon. Now, fastest overall, first sector, fastest overall, second sector, one might assume, without having to go into the realms of being an Einstein, this could be the new quickest lap.
Well, he set the fastest lap yesterday. Thomas Neubauer, very promising young French racer. And I really get a feel this season, John, we've got a host of new young stars coming up. They might have dipped their toe in the GT3 pond last year, but this year the likes of Neubauer are really delivering. Let's see, can he get down into the low 32s? Can he even get down into the 131s? That is in the realm of the real quick ones. Waiting for proof to come up on the screen. There it is, 131.893. The answer to the question. It seemed likely to go that way.
Well, his pole time in a different session, different time of the day, was 132.1. So already he's taken a substantial amount of time, 31.893. And it's Michael Grenier in the Lamborghini, who's currently second quickest, but he's 0.7 of a second behind. So massive advantage yet again. Look, there's a Lamborghini. Look at that. And that is currently the car. Well, it had been second quickest at one point. It's down to 7th. But Nicholas Scholl has just given the fastest overall sector time in Sector 1. You can see it purple, 1:33.102. So that's keeping him currently in 7th position. But that fastest overall sector time in Sector 1 is interesting.
Yeah, his middle sector time was almost a second down on what he ought to have been achieving. Now, 89 was a car that really had hope in the race yesterday. Started by Jim Pla from 3rd on the grid. And his teammate, new teammate, Benjamin Hites from Chile came here and was doing a great job. We expected him to maybe lose a position or two, and unfortunately he was then knocked out of position down at turn 8. Not his fault at all, innocent bystander. In fact, a battle between two teammates, the Attempto Racing drivers Fred Vervish and Mathieu Drudy, and Hites got knocked out of it, and then unfortunately given a real clobber by a car from somewhat further down the order while he sat sideways in the track. Good to see that car's been fixed overnight. Tough luck for the ASB.
It was a 33 WRT Audi that for some reason didn't see the Mercedes stuck in the middle of the racetrack waiting to get back into the event, and simply just drove into the right rear corner, broke the suspension on the Mercedes, did a fair amount of damage around the front of the Audi as we watch Jimmy Pla, who is really hustling the Mercedes. Been very impressive all weekend. Personal best 1st and 2nd sector, so it's going to be somewhere in the 32s. Yes, 32.5. So Jimmy Pla pops himself onto provisional 2nd row of the grid, 4th quickest, 1:32.587.
Now Richiru Tomita arrived with an absolute bang yesterday and got right at the sharp end of the field, and he wasn't just flying in qualifying, he was really, really good in race conditions as well. So here's a name that we probably haven't given enough consideration to, and delivering in style. And his teammate, Kelvin van der Linde, you can't do better than that, really. So the fact that their car finished the race yesterday in 2nd place just shows the promise this Japanese racer has.
Well, we're very familiar with Kelvin van der Linde. Outstanding performance 2 weekends ago at Imola. But Tomita-san is fulfilling his role, and certainly matching virtually what Kelvin van der Linde has done. And coming from Japan, where you've raced, I know it's very competitive racing, and that is the GT300 series that he raced in. A very competitive championship in Japan, coming into an extremely competitive championship here, fundamentally in Europe, and delivering. There's the sister car, Charles Betts, driving that alongside Dries van Thorn. This is the winning car. Needs to be careful. This is down at turn 13, 14. We saw cars yesterday running very wide between turn 13 and 14 and running the risk of getting a penalty. But Weerts, again, nothing left on the table whatsoever from the young Belgian driver. Personal best Sector 1, fractionally down Sector 2. Goes 2nd quickest, so good effort, 1:32.270, 0.3 of a second away.
So yesterday in the equivalent session, it was the Tech 1 Racing Lexus, top of the chart, same place today. 2nd place, the only other car really in the mix was one of the 2 CMR Bentleys. At the moment, Jules Gounon down in 7th place. He just on a really quick lap. Looking at Giacomo Altoe, he'd been up near the sharp end of the field. And what's this lap going to do for him? Up to 3rd place, but just wait. Certainly Gounon is on a charge. He's 2/3 of the way around the lap in the Bentley. The 107, that's the metallic green one. The sister car is metallic blue. Didn't get to go very far in the race yesterday, but certainly for 107 with that 3rd place on the board last night. The Bentley crews, just worth pointing out, with CMR this year, not the Works team anymore. So Bentley really spreading its wing in the privateer area. Gounon goes up to 3rd place. We just saw Altoe take 3rd. He was demoted by Stoltz and then immediately by Jules Gounon. Gounon is 0.005 of a second down on Charles Weerts, who's exactly 1/3 of a second down on Thomas Neubauer. Again, that Lexus is looking super, super promising.
Well, what's impressive about the Lexus, it looks as if it's doing it so much within itself, whereas Jules Gounon is wringing the neck in the Bentley to try and drag a performance out. Again, what we aren't sure about is the condition of the tyres that Gounion's got on compared to that of others around him. So right now, the Bentley is 0.005 of a second away from being on the front row of the grid. But in terms of time, it's 1:31.8 for the Lexus, 1:32.4. So it's just over half a second.
Just looking at one of the Attempto Audis in the pits, really promising 20-year-old in there, Tommaso Masca. He was actually 3rd on the charts a short while ago. Now he's in the pits. He's fallen to 8th place overall. But we just seem to have a whole raft of new drivers who are 19, 20 years old. How the times have changed. 20 years ago, they'd have all been in single-seaters. But he's come from racing in the Italian Porsche series and has taken to this with considerable verve and aplomb. He was good in race form as well, so it's just fantastic having these new names dropping into the championship.
I suppose, Bruce, it's inevitable because generational. Oh, to meet her getting in the back of the Audi. You don't often see an Audi sliding the tail like that coming out of turn 16, so he's staying in fourth position. He's got the Bentley behind him, currently in third. So that last lap for the Bentley was only fractionally slower, but in terms of hundredths of a second. So position still is that this session, with 8 minutes remaining, dominated by the Tech 1 Racing Lexus, and really nobody's within just over a quarter of a second, 0.3 of a second of the Lexus. So again, illustrating the performance that we saw on Saturday afternoon, certainly in qualifying, then on Saturday evening in that day-ish, night-ish race. Unfortunately, it had to stop after the driver change. Something, water leak, radiator damage, whichever. There is the Lexus up on its axle stands. Looks like the car you'd give, I can't say, it might sound a little bit sort of sexist, but you'd give your wife or girlfriend to drive.
Really?
Possibly. Maybe I'll have to revisit that comment and say, what a beautiful masculine car.
Well, I tell you what, it's about the least dramatic car out there, because it does everything it's supposed to do, and certainly the cameo role of Jules Gounon trying to harry it, or certainly harry it in the early stage of the race yesterday from the start, when the front two just pulled away from the field. It was chalk and cheese between the two cars.
What I think I was trying to say is, some GT3 cars, they grow body. You know, the panels get larger, everything gets big, and you look at it and you think, wow, how does that look compared to the standard product? Whereas the Lexus actually looks very close to the standard product.
Right, riding on board here, one of the Pro-Am Chargers, that's Chris Froggatt, the Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari, and he's almost got a clear track, one car up ahead, but the vast majority of this field sitting in the pit lane, ruminating what they're going to do. They're going to throw fresh tyres at it, going past the other Ferrari in the event. That was very well driven to the side of the track by Eve Corsa's driver at the moment, Louis Machiel. So he was being very gentlemanly. He's in class, and he's ahead on time to Froggatt, but Froggatt is not going to complete this lap. Always happens, doesn't it, John?
Indeed. So cars on track, cars coming back into the pit lane. 7 minutes remaining. There's plenty of time if you want to have a small alteration. There's not an awful lot you can do to a GT3 car in that short space of time. So maybe the simple answer is, if you've got another set of rubber that is slightly fresher, throw it on and see what happens.
Certainly looking to see what lies in front of us. Top car in, it's just moved up, top car in the Silver Cup class, Tommaso Mosca sitting in the pits. But one drive I want to pick out at the moment, Timo Boguclaski is only 12th, and the important factor there is he shares with Raffaele Marciello, and his teammate Marciello has qualified on pole for this morning's race, but he drove mightily yesterday evening to pick the car up the order, but he was gaining a place every couple of laps. But traffic around here is so tricky, and starting down in 14th place yesterday was so hard for that car.
Yeah, that's the difficulty, starting in the mid-pack, or in fact almost the back of the mid-pack, and you really got little prospect of making progress up through the field. And again, okay, he's done marginally better. He's currently in 12th position, so that's the 6th row of the grid. But, you know, when the lights go out and you run down into turn one, we saw yesterday, in fact, everybody was very well behaved. But that pinch point going into turn one and then the transition to turn two, if you're stuck in the middle, you've almost got to come to a standstill until the whole field sorts itself out.
Remarkably empty track at the moment, so anyone out there has a very good possibility of picking up some form. Stephen Paulette went very well yesterday, topped car in the Silver Cup class, sharing with Simon Gachet. He's got a nice clear run, nothing to really obstruct his form around this 16-turn circuit, running a little bit wide there. Picking up the pace, he will gain a position or two, one thinks this time. His next target is Nicolas Scholl, and with the exception of that great gap, the third of a second between our provisional pole man, Thomas Neubauer, and the rest, everybody else is separated by about a tenth of a second.
And they've just gone second. Stephen Paulette has just gone in that Silver Cup Audi, quickest, in fact second quickest. Silver Cup cars are dominating the front row of the grid, which is something probably unexpected, but maybe not necessarily the way that because we've got these three events, and it's one driver does Q1, the other driver does Q2, then back to Q1. So Lucas Stoltz, someone I would expect to see very much up at the sharp end, currently third row of the grid, 6th quickest. So 4 minutes and 40 seconds remaining, so time to go out and do your out lap, have one flying lap, and you never know, if you get around quickly enough, you might just make it into a second flying lap. But certainly Lucas Stoltz, I would have thought, would have been nearer to the front. That HRT, basically it's the Black Falcon team in the new ownership under Hubert Harp. And that is the lead Mercedes, in fact.
Indeed it is at the moment, but now, whereas most of the cars were in the pits about 3 or 4 minutes ago, they're now all out on the circuit. Actually, a couple in the pits, but that's 20 cars going out to play with 4 minutes in which to do it. The Lexus is on top by 0.313 of a second. We just had Stephen Paulette get a little bit closer, but you'll see green on the screen everywhere. Tommaso Mosca fallen down to 9th place. He will pick his way up. You can see he's going to gain about 0.2 of a second, so that should move him up from 9th, where it might take him up to about 5th. Let's take a look as he crosses the start-finish line.
But Bruce,
second, he goes second, way better than I expected.
Yeah, absolutely, but further down the field, we've got Arthur Rouget in his Santa Racing Audi, fastest second sector of anybody. So watch for the 25 Audi, because it's going to suddenly put its nose up into that front 2 or 3 rows of the grid, assuming he gets a clear run through that final sector. On board with the Bentley, Jules Gugnon. So he is looking to also make some further progress. He's dropped back now into 7th position. Bentley expecting to go a little bit further up the field. And where will they? Well, only one position up to 6th in the 3rd row of the grid. Where is Arthur Rouget? He's gone second quickest. So Audi now on the front row of the grid alongside Thomas Neubauer and the Lexus. The gap is only just over 1/10 of a second.
But who's gone up to 3rd place? Marcello will be delighted it's now become 4th, because Grenier's got 3rd. But Timo Boguslawski qualified way down in the second half of the grid today, and he's got up at the sharp end.
That
Good
is
job.
a much more representative performance. Now, Jules Gugnon, just talking about the Bentley, has been dropping back again, literally, as cars come across the line. They're recording quicker time.
But
gone purple.
Gone purple. Jules Gugnon, first sector, is making it count, so he could suddenly leap from down in 9th place up onto the front row. He was on the front row yesterday in 2nd place and really took the battle to Thomas Neubauer in the first half of the race. Arthur Rouget in this yellow-flanked Santalot Racing Audi has really impressed this weekend. So at the moment he's sitting 2nd fastest, but those behind are super close.
This is the car we got to keep our eyes on. Bentley, number 107, Jules Gugnon behind the wheel. Purple in that first sector. Waiting to see second sector times, should be coming up very shortly.
Yeah, but while he's doing that, John, suddenly Charles Weerts is fastest of all through the first sector. So it's really going to be a lot of times tumbling. Keep our eyes on the top of the screen. Can anyone topple Thomas Neubauer? Well, the time is running out. One more lap coming from Gugnon. He's about to complete this one. Where's he going to go? He's certainly going to rise from 10th place.
Not far to go. Gets a good clean exit on the turn 16. Can't go any quicker. He's flat out all the way down 5th. That's going to be a disappointment, because I would have thought that fast first sector would have worked more in their favour. So starting currently, provisionally, on the 3rd row of the grid, and that could be changed because Charles Weerts, who's coming up to complete a lap. Middle sector was down, well, you can see down by just over 1/10 of a second. So that should see an improvement from the present 9th position for Charles Weerts in the 32 Audi, the WRT factory team, or quasi-factory team. Comes across the line, goes up into 3rd place.
Well, that was the winning car last night. Really exciting race. Just want to blow the trumpet for Emil Frey Racing. Their Lamborghinis are in 4th and 5th positions. Giacomo Alto has just moved ahead of Michael Grenier, so they're much more in the mix for this afternoon's race. This is defining the grid for race number 3 of our 3 here at Misano. But the clock is into the final minute. It's still Thomas Neubauer, who's in the pits at the moment, not really bothering, still on pole, but it's now down to just 0.088 of a second over Arthur Rouget. Can Rouget do more and topple him?
Well, it just appears that the Tech One Racing Lexus, all it has to do is go out on track, pop a time, and then goes back into the pits. They've run a total of 7 laps. But in fact, looking at Tommaso Mosca,
just got second, John.
I'm going to say fastest overall in that final sector.
39 thousandths the size of his deficit.
That is making, I would think, the Lexus boys, well, there's not much time, 18 seconds. You're not out on track. Ain't anything you're going to be able to do about it. That is a stunning time.
And he's got time to do more.
Yep.
So he stepped up from Porsche Italian Series, and it's really making an impression. Santalot will be Atento Racing, very pleased with him. And Matteo Drudi, his teammate, we know is proven star racer. So this is proving to be a really strong pairing.
Just to show you how even the Audi is across, there are 3 teams running it. Atento Racing is 2nd, Santalot 3rd, then WRT 4th on the grid, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Those 3 Audis run by 3 independent teams.
Okay, so the checkered flag is down. We still have probably 20 cars out of the track completing their final flyers. It's still Thomas Neubauer in the pits on provisional pole position. He was sitting with 1/3 of a second of an advantage. 3/10 of that has been taken away. He's down to 0.039 of a second. But where are the quick times coming from at the end of the session. Quite a few cars now coming into the pits. Can Tommaso Mosca improve on this lap? Not on the first sector, not on the second sector. So maybe Tech 1 Racing has called it right, saved some tyre life, and will remain at the top of the pile. I cannot see the challenge coming, John, at this stage. No one's really going green in the top.
I mean, I think a lot of the performances in this session have been really much more about who's run on which tyre. The thing that I would be concerned about, and certainly in terms of looking down through the grid, you've got that, okay, the Lexus on pole position that's been in a class of its own, in fact, by its out-and-out pace, but almost matched by the Audi Attempto Audi, then the Santaloc Audi, then the WRT Audi. Those three Audis are going to be, once again, like a swarm of little Audis, with two Lamborghinis, then the first of the Mercedes, Timo Bergalevsky. Jules Gugnon on the fourth row of the grid in the Bentley. That's a disappointment, I would say, for the team, because they would have hoped, because even on the fourth row of the grid, it's going to be a struggle to find a way through, particularly when you've got that group of three Audis plus the two Lamborghinis directly ahead of you.
Well, I think if you end up down in 10th place or fourth or fifth rows, you'll be thinking even more about those first two corners. Turns 1 and 2, they come across you really quickly, and sometimes you can gain enormously by just being in the right place at the right time down there, and likewise it can go the other way. You just have to cross your fingers if you're starting down.
Bruce, just looking down the timing and scoring, another disappointment to me is that the HRT Mercedes, Lucas Stolz, 10th quickest, fifth row of the grid. I mean, last year that was a car that was always at the very front.
Well, just looking, Mercedes seems to be in the ballpark, but not right at the very sharp end. I think the world is moving on, and certainly the Tech 1 Racing crew with its Lexus has been supreme. And good to see some new faces up at the top of the field there. Tommaso Mosca, just putting in such a strong run. To be top of the Audi pile is super, super impressive. And for Attempto Racing, they've really stepped up. But let's take a look at the qualifying times. Thomas Neubauer prevailed, so his teammate Aurélien Panis will be very delighted. They'll be starting race number 3. That's the one this afternoon from pole position. At the end, it came down to just 39 thousandths of a second over young Tommaso Mosca. Arthur Rougier, another young star, showing the young bucks are coming through. And Audi filling second, third and fourth, because Charles Weerts, one of last night's winners, is in fourth on the grid. Then the best of Lamborghinis, Giacomo Alte, and his teammate Miko Grenier, fifth and sixth. Timo Bogoslawski, top Mercedes racer there, and then just one position ahead of the lead Bentley of Jules Gugnon. So good job done by everyone. No spins, nothing untoward during that session. It was tight, John, in the end, really tight, but for a long time that Tech 1 Lexus just looked like it had the whole thing in its pocket.
I mean, it had it sewn up. I mean, and nobody ever got to put the Lexus under the degree of challenge that it would mean it had to go back out and defend its provisional pole position. But the gap between those first 3-4 cars, well, it's what, just 72 hundredths of a second? Sorry, 32 hundredths of a second. I mean, it's nothing. But, of course, it's starting in pole, you can control what happens into turn 1.
Well, talking pole, let's go down and hear from the man himself, Thomas Neubauer.
Thomas, a fantastic qualifying for you after the disappointment yesterday in the race. The emotion was evident when you got out of the car.
Yeah, obviously there's loads of emotion right now. The team did a brilliant job all night long, rebuilding a brand new engine. And so we were not expecting this morning after what happened yesterday. So yeah, just the teamwork. That's it.
Confident for the race ahead with the car?
Yeah, I hope the race 2 of tonight will be good. I hope obviously better than yesterday. So now finger crossed, and yeah, we keep working to do it.
Congratulations, well done.
Thank you.
Well, there's a young man who made his mark last year in the Silver Cup class, and he's doing it even more so to be right at the front of the field, to do it 2 days running, totally different track conditions, much cooler this morning. That's a team on form and a driver right at the top of his game.
Interesting, he said they changed the engine. I know that they had a radiator problem. That was the reason why the car stopped. Or that was the reason that was given. Maybe, obviously, there was something more than... it's a bit like in the good old days when Enzo Ferrari ran his Formula One team. They never had an engine failure. They used to have oil leaks and water leaks, but never an engine failure.
Yeah, it's always been the same in rallying, the radiator failure. That's because the radiator was now 2 feet further back than it was supposed to be because you'd hit a rock face or whatever. Well, let's take a look at the highlights. 20 minutes of qualifying. It's very, very quick fire. It's a tight track, 4.226 kilometres, 22 cars going out to play. It's about getting the tyres up to temperature, getting the brain up to temperature, making sure there's no traffic. You don't drop a wheel over the edge. Just saw one of the Owega brothers doing just that. And tail out, that was Ryuichiro Tomita, but it was one of his best laps. So the Japanese driver, very, very entertaining. Indeed, but at the end it was Thomas Neubauer, well at the middle it was Thomas Neubauer who set the time for the Tech 1 Lexus racing team. The rest, all they could do was give chase, and in a final flurry, Arthur Rougier moved up to third place, but no one, by 39 thousandths of a second, could topple the Lexus.